Here we go, Simon says. Final round, and we win the die roll, so let's play first. We have a Plains and the Swamp, that's almost an instant keep, but we also have great cards. Vizkopa Guildmage, Kingpin's Pet, Executioner's Swing, and Vizkopa Confessor. Yeah, that's probably one of the best starting hands we've seen so far. Not going to mulligan. Let's see what our final opponent has prepared for us. Vizkopa Guildmage did a pretty good job last game, and somehow our extorting was more efficient than what our opponent was trying to do. And the two spells that were stranded in his hand certainly helped us. I'm not going to allow our Guildmage to trade with Skinbrand Goblin. Our opponent also playing only mountains could mean that he doesn't have his second color. And it looks like that's the case. So we do have a somewhat awkward turn here where we can't really play anything, but we could keep open Executioner Swing, but Bombarcore isn't actually all that dangerous, and we do gain 2 life from the Guildmage, so I think we can risk that. It's also, Vizkopa Guildmage isn't a card that we desperately need to survive, so yeah, I'm not too unhappy about this. Here we do have the Night Watch against Bombarcore, but we would still have to double block it, and then we lose both of our creatures. We could block the Skinbrand Goblin to make sure that Battalion isn't really a thing. But what I like best is to just Executioner Swing the Bombarcore next turn. Also, our opponent is also color screwed, so the only question is if the Guildmage should trade with Skinbrand Goblin here, and I think it should. I don't see us losing this game in any if it just proceeds in any reasonable fashion. So here I'm still going to give my opponent the option to cast something on the Bombarcore, and then I'm actually going to Executioner Swing it, allowing me to keep Devour Flash for his next play, which is an Ember Beast, which is horrible. So the question is if we even Devour Flash the Ember Beast here, or if this is, yeah, I think we still do. It's not a great creature to hit with Devour Flash, but we have all these expensive cards in our hand and we want to play them. And I'm going to wait on the Confessor simply because I do have one exort creature in play. The 2/2 Knights might actually be highly relevant here. And I don't want to play. I didn't want to pay like 5 life just to look at my opponent's hand. The Confessor might actually be one in a weaker card in this matchup, but it's still a 1/3. So that appeared to be rather easy, but that was because our opponent had some trouble with his mana. So this is assuming that we are playing against Boros, maybe Gruul, aggro. We don't really have all that many cards in our sideboard to bring in because we are also already focusing on being very mana efficient. I like all the cheap spells, and I do like the Confessors to make sure that we are still the deck that's favored in the longer game. And I'm not really interested in racing a Blood Rush Battalion deck, so I'm not going to board like we saw in the last match. Yeah, I think the deck is just fine like it is, and Back in Apparition should also be nice to have against Madcap Skills. So is High Priest, and yeah, this is a good matchup for us. Maybe for the first time this draft. Just going to keep it. What I didn't consider is that we could have once again taken out a plains for the additional swamp. Looks from the looks of our hand, we aren't getting punished though. Always going to run out the thrall here. It does give my opponent some information, and we might have to keep it back to block, but it's also not the end of the world. We can't really attack here, but we do a 2-drop, and I think I've said that before, but 2-drops are the best thing in Gatecrash, and drawing one on turn 2 is basically the best thing you can do. Here it's interesting that we have the smite in hand, but we need to get a flyer into play to block the Bomber Core. Kingpin's Pet is such a flyer, and alternatively we could Gutter Skulk, but then next time when we play Kingpin's Pet and we don't extort, well, I guess it's a tell to play Gutter Skulk either way, but Kingpin's Pet still allows us to just not block Bomber Core just as well, so it does give our opponent one more turn to use a removal spell on Kingpin's Pet. But we have some more flyers and also the 2 beacon apparitions. So it looks like our opponent is just playing an all-in aura deck. Just playing a single creature and putting 2 enchantments on it. That's an interesting take. We also have an interesting line coming up. I'm going to play Corpse Blockade and extort once. And then next turn, when or if our opponent doesn't do anything else, we might be forced to sacrifice one of our creatures if we draw back an apparition. So that's why I'm not playing the Gutter Skulk. That's not a flyer, so yeah, we still can't really block anything. But what we can do is be as aggressive as possible while taking all that damage from Bomber Core. Here, the trade with Syndic and Skimmerant Goblin isn't all that amazing. Oh, that's also not all that amazing. That actually means that we have almost no outs from this point on, which is kind of unfortunate. We still had the chance to draw into an additional flyer, but now that he killed our Kingpin's Pet, that's basically not going to happen. And one thing that's also a problem is that now he has the additional creature, so that our Devour Flesh isn't going to work out. So aerial maneuver was pretty big beating here. Wow. So we just take 10. Yeah. Interesting game. Interesting game. We didn't really draw anything to block the Bomber Core anyway. I think that our deck is well positioned against this kind of strategy. We have 2 smites, Devour Flesh, Executioner's Swing, 2 backing apparitions, Kingpin's Pet, Assault Griffin. We don't have all that many flyers, but there isn't that much we can do about that. So, like I said, we don't have a lot of ways to interact with that, except for the cards I just listed. So I'm going to keep it like this and hope that we either have a solution to him going all in, or we just take over the game because everything else is just not very scary from our perspective. Now we are going to be on the play. I'm going to take out the plains for the swamp again. We are going to draw less cards, so having both colors from the beginning against an aggressive deck should be more important, but like I said, it's not really a decision where you can be sure that going one way or the other is correct. And this hand is okay, but lacking a flyer and removal, but we don't have enough flyers or removal to take mulligans, and as I've said countless times, the mana of this deck and in this format is so bad that I'm just going to keep this, especially because our ground defense are very good. From last game, we saw that even if our opponent has a start where he puts madcap skills on Bomber Core, it's not really threatening to kill us in 3 or 4 turns. We can make sure that the game goes a bit longer than that. But of course, against Gift of Orzhova, we basically didn't have a way to stop what he was doing. And that Knight of Obligation is once again a great card to have. 2/4 Vigilance. Extort is just a very, very good package for a 4-drop. And this attack means that our opponent is most likely on the 2/1 Blood Rush card. And we have several ways to go about things here. Could just trade it with the High Priest, which seems the most logical step, letting us keep the extort creatures. Could also block with Basilica Guards and High Priest. But then he's going to use his Goblin to make his Halberdiers 5 power. Yeah, that isn't too bad. I mean, we know that he's reliant on his creatures, so, and we also know that from our hand, the Basilica Guards aren't a big priority for us. I think double blocking here isn't the worst. I don't want to expose the Knight of Obligation. That's pretty easy, I think. We've seen how many auras and Blood Rush cards our opponent has, so making him have less creatures overall has to be a good idea. So the ordering is Basilica Guards first, and he actually has the first strike spell. So yeah, that just means that our Basilica Guards got killed by aerial maneuver. I probably should have attacked before playing something with the knight, because now if I attack and he just double blocks, I lose the Knight of Obligation to Vorjek Halberdiers, and that's not something I can afford to do. So yeah, if I attack first, he can't really block, but I have also no guarantee if he does or doesn't. So might have missed a damn. Well, I'm not sure if I even attack with my hand, given that his double block is very, very good against what I'm trying to do. And there's the Gift of Orzhova again. And once again, we are lacking ways to deal with it. We have the High Priest in play, but it's not flying, and we didn't have the mana to play the Vizkopa Confessor to make sure that the coast is clear. And that's just brutal. Yeah, he knows that we don't really have anything, so maybe it would have been better to keep open black-white, but I wanted to have both regeneration shields available. That's a beating. So yeah, that smite isn't doing anything, and the 5 drops are uncastable. So at least the ground is relatively stable here. So any flyer or anything else really is pretty good. So our opponent didn't attack. It could be because he's scared of us having something, but it could just as well be him misclicking. So the thing is, if I play something now, then it becomes more likely that he attacks me. But I think it's the correct play from his side anyway. So I'm not going to assume that he isn't going to attack ever. So I'm just going to drop my cards. Opponent has a Martial Glory and a Plane, so we got something out of the deal. And are still not attacking. Dutiful Thrall is now exposed to Bomber Core, but if he allows the High Priest to block, we get rid of his enchanted halberdiers, so don't expect him to attack us. Now basically we have to draw a removal spell or a flyer. And the flyer isn't really doing it anymore because of Madcap Skills. So that was a pretty nice draw on his part. We have no way to get High Priest to take damage. I think the only thing we can do is just play something, go to 1 next turn, and then hopefully draw one of the few cards that we can draw. Otherwise, we just lose to those auras, like we did the other game. So I'm not even sure if we still have something to draw here. We don't have 2 flyers to play, and Executioner Swing isn't an option anymore. So we might just be dead here. Yeah, we have the smites, but neither the flyer nor 2 of them to counteract Madcap Skills. So yeah, I think we just lose here. Kind of unfortunate, but don't really see what we could have done. Especially after he killed the Knight of Obligation, things just went downhill from there. We knew about the threat of his auras, but he got the Gift of Orzhova down before we could play the Confessor and do the Madcap Skills immediately after we play the Confessor. So that combined made it very difficult to win this game. But we already knew that having only those situational removal spells was one of the major problems of this deck. So I think that this loss here is, yeah, something that exposed our weakness. Let's just tap out here and then look at what we got out of the deal. We did win 4 packs, and I think we did so with a deck that wasn't spectacular but still had some nice things going for it. I really like Cartel Aristocrat. We had Knight of Obligation as one of the best Orzhov uncommons, and even though our removal was situational, Devour Flash, Executioner Swing, and 2 Smites is almost optimal. Of course, you would want one Grisly Spectacle or maybe a Killing Glare. In this particular spot, Grisly Spectacle would have been the card to have, but it's not impossible to win a lot of games and matches without those cards. Now, this combination of cards is just kind of tough to beat, and then we had a very unfortunate pit fight combined with Gift of the Orzhova as well. So I think that losing in the finals with this deck is probably a little above expectation already, and we saw that once again that Gatecrash is very, very brutal. The cheap cards are just have such a high utility. Like even this 6-drop, which is insane, didn't really matter anymore because the 2 and 3 mana spells won our opponent the game. If you look at the casting cost of his spells, it's 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 6. So that gives you a very good idea of the impact of Gatecrash cards across mana curve. And yeah, that's also something to keep in mind when Dragon's Maze hits. It's how does the tempo of the format change, and where do you pick up? Do you go for 3 and 4 drops, or are 2 drops still the way to go? Are the increased number of 2/4s at common and the more expensive cards going to have a serious impact, or is it going to be one deck that wants the slower cards and the other decks the other guild decks, the other 3-color aggro decks still want the 2 drops? The question of mana consistency is the other big topic. It wasn't amazing in Return to Ravnica and Gatecrash. I think that splashing is very, very dangerous in this format. And now we're going to enter an age of 3-color decks, mostly control-ish, but also aggressive decks, or at least highly synergistic decks. If you look at the Return to Ravnica and Gatecrash mechanics, they are highly synergistic across guilds as well. So yeah, where do you go from there? Do you just prioritize mana fixing to an extent that we haven't seen so far? And how do you position yourself on the axis of power versus consistency? It's going to be interesting to explore Dragon's Maze Limited with you, dear watchers. As always, I'm Simon Gertzen. This is my series Simon Says on mtgoacademy.com. Let me know what you think in the comments on mtgoacademy.com or on YouTube, but you have a higher chance of me responding when it's on the official site. You can also catch me on Twitter at Simon Gertzen, and I'll be around. See you next time.